On today's show, we're wrapping up our series on the 7 essential strategies for successful investing in retirement. And we're closing with 2 strategies that can make or break your retirement plan. How to manage your retirement portfolio tax burden, and whether working with an advisor during the retirement income phase of life is the right decision for you. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Over the past 3 episodes, we've covered some very key strategies. Number 1, we talked about the importance of having a plan. It starts with your values and includes your goals. You got to have point A, you got to have point B before we ever figure out how we're going to get from one to the other. Then we talked about understanding the true objective of a retirement portfolio, which should be growth of income. We also talked about how to reframe risk in retirement. And then our last episode, we discussed the important role of stocks to maintain purchasing power over what could be a 30-plus year retirement, and the value of dividend growth investing. These 2 being the key building blocks of your retirement portfolio. Today, we'll bring it all together with our final 2 strategies. And as always, joining me is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I've got a question for you. So before we get to these last 2 strategies, are there any of the strategies we've discussed so far that you felt like really resonated with you, or then you say, hey, I just didn't realize how important that actually is in my retirement years?
Yeah, there's 2 things. As you just mentioned, the value of the dividend growth. I thought that was very eye-opening because I really don't ever hear people talk about that. But also the success of the market over time, even after a huge downturn, like it's way more successful than I thought.
Right. Well, I think that is the challenge.
Let's keep it going.
Well, and that's the challenge, because you don't hear none of that is the good stuff on the news, right? That doesn't get clicks. Is historically, just stick with it and you'll be fine. That doesn't get clicks. It doesn't get eyeballs looking at your stuff, right?
Right. Well, I've heard the growth, like, a normal growth is 7% and 12% and all that, but it sounded a lot higher when we wwere talking about it.
It's not necessarily that the returns are higher. It's just that, when you hear in the news, all you hear about are the big swings, the downturns, what's funny, I think, is the Dow Jones has dropped 200 points.
Right.
But what's funny to me is they stress it the same as they do today as they did 30 years ago. And 200 points today is not anywhere near as impactful as 200 points 30 years ago, right? But they make it sound like it's just as critical. Yeah. Hey, you better watch this. You better pay attention. Something bad might happen. Happen.
Fear sells.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's really the things I wanted to set the expectations with around this when we're talking about retirement investing, because people do have those fears. They worry about, hey, I'm in my retirement years. I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to have to go back to work. If I choose to, maybe I will, but I don't want to have to do that. And so as we start putting together these, again, what I consider these 7 essential strategies to successful investing, it's how do we deal with those fears? Because they are going to come. That's the one thing I want people to understand. It's not if we see a down market, it is when.
Right.
But how prepared are we in advance rather than getting into the middle of that down market and now we panic and because we don't know what our strategy is.
Right.
And that's really what I think the biggest thing is, having your strategy well in advance of these difficult periods, not trying to figure out what do I do and making emotional reactions or emotional decisions, because emotional decisions when it comes to money are almost always the wrong decision.
Yeah. So it's about our purchasing power. And, I don't want to lose my money. I want my money.
Right. Well, and I think, again, back to reframing risk of people, so many times they think about in retirement, I got to be safe. I got to be conservative.
Right.
Well, and again, all you're doing is trading one type of risk, loss of purchasing power. Maybe you are getting rid of market risk because your money's not going to go down, but that doesn't mean you're not going to run out of money still. If prices increase faster than your returns, you're still going to run out of money.
Yeah. And that was a good eye-opening example, lesson as well. So yeah, I mean, you're just a smarty.
I appreciate that. That's I'm going to put that on my business card.
A smarty.
That's right. That's got to be a selling point, right?
I would think.
All right. So I definitely want to transition to these next 2 strategies. These are our final 2 strategies. Because, the one thing we got to be aware of is in retirement, there's more to consider than just the investments, just the portfolio. And one of the most important and often the most surprising is managing your tax burden.
Okay.
Because a big part of it is that you don't have the same tools in retirement that you had while you were working. You don't have a 401k you can contribute to reduce your taxable income. You don't have health insurance premiums that will reduce your taxable income. You don't have child tax credits anymore. You don't get that benefit. If you've got children, you no longer have that. And for the most part, most of your children are probably grown if you're retired.
You
don't get, we think so. You don't, not for everybody. Actually, we know there's some of the celebrities and who knows. But
yeah. Janet Jackson, pop them out at 50.
That's right. For most of us normal people, when you get to retirement, your children are probably grown. So there's no child tax credits. There's none of some of those other ways you could reduce your taxable income once you get to those retirement years. And the other part then is we talk about taxes in retirement are filled with a lot of these different surprises that people just don't know about. For example, there's, and I've shared this on the past episodes, but there's IRMA, Aunt Irma and Uncle Sam. IRMA is income related monthly adjustment amount, which is basically an extra Medicare premium that sneaks up on people because their income is higher than they thought it might be. A lot of times it's triggered because of required distribution. So people not planning in advance for required distributions that push their income higher than they expected it to be, or other sources of income. One of the things I see a lot is when people decide to downsize, or maybe they sell a piece of real estate and they have capital gains, they sell that property and that income pushes above some of these IRMA thresholds, not thinking that that's going to be the case. And so you got to be aware of these when you're making big decisions on selling an asset, whether it's investments or real estate, whatever it might be. You want to make sure you understand what the implications are going to be. And then when talking about RMDs, how confusing can that be over the last handful of years where they've gone from 70.5 to 72. Now they're somewhere between 73 and 75. Who knows? So somebody might know, but you got to make sure you understand you're based on your year of birth. When do my required distributions actually start? And when can I just leave it alone? Just pick one and leave it there.
Yeah. I mean, you have to keep up with all of this stuff. It's
right.
Always changing.
Exactly. And then we get to Social Security taxation, not actually knowing what income gets included in how much your Social Security is going to get taxed. So you have those types of issues as well. And then throw it on top this year, we got this one big, beautiful bill act, which adds a whole new set of provisions that retirees need to be aware of, like the new age 65 plus deduction. The other part to that is, we talked, they're always changing, but then some of these actually end at some point. So how do I utilize them, or how do I use them to my advantage while they're still there? So it's not just about knowing what the taxes are, but it's trying to keep up with the tax laws that are, again, as you said, constantly shifting under your feet. So just some key strategies that we use with our clients. I want to share some of these. It's managing asset location. And this is one a lot of people don't think about, but we talked about stocks and dividends. We talked about bonds over these last couple of episodes, but you might also think about which types of accounts do I have and what are the tax implications of those specific accounts. So for example, if I've got bonds in my portfolio, those typically are going to have a little bit more taxable income because they're just paying interest versus stocks. In order to trigger gains on stocks, I typically have to sell. Now I get some dividend income as we shared in the last episode as well. But should that change, should I have, for example, my more bonds in my IRA because it's tax deferred and have stocks in my after tax accounts or my taxable accounts because there's less tax impact there? So that's what we call managing asset location. Then of course we got managing IRA withdrawals and the timing. When should I start taking IRA withdrawals? How does that get impacted by my Social Security decisions and my RMDs, my required distributions, all those types of things, managing the priority of which account should I be drawing from first. And then for us, we also focus on making sure we're using low cost, low turnover ETFs or funds within the portfolios, again, to minimize the tax drag, is what we refer to it as, the tax implications of our taxable accounts to, again, hopefully reduce taxable income. And then what I would call strategically using Roth conversions, basically saying, okay, if we are in a lower tax bracket now, if we are retired and we're in a lower tax bracket today, do we need to think about pulling some of those dollars out of our pre-tax accounts or IRAs, converting those to Roth IRAs so that now that money is tax-free going forward in case I do need that money in the future. I need a big lump sum in the future. as well.
Hmm.
We also have tax loss harvesting, which is basically saying, okay, if I do happen to have an investment in a taxable account that's worth less today than it was when I bought it, could I use that to my benefit from a tax perspective? I sell that, what's called, again, harvesting those losses, and it helps reduce my taxable income in the current year. So there's all these different types of strategies. And if you really want to go deeper in some of these, I've actually recorded entire episodes on some of these different topics. I want to share those really quickly. So just in episode 65, I actually went deep dive into the new tax law and how that could impact retirees, how the new tax law could impact your retirement. That was episode 65. We did how to pay taxes in retirement. A lot of people, that's one of the most confusing part is, well, now if I don't have a paycheck to withhold taxes from, how do I actually pay taxes? That was episode 48. Social Security, how Social Security gets taxed. I covered that in episode 54. And then last but not least, on episode 75, I actually went through what I call our year-end tax planning checklist. What are the things you really need to be thinking about before the end of the year that could have a positive impact on your tax situation? So go back and take a look at, listen to those episodes if you, again, want to go into this deep dive in some of these topics that can help you from a tax perspective.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, managing your taxes in retirement is not just a set and forget it activity.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a moving target. And one of the things that I say to our clients on a very regular basis is the biggest advantage we have over Uncle Sam is that Uncle Sam only looks at 1 year at a time, where we have the ability to look several years down the road, make educated decisions on what strategies we can implement this year to help reduce our lifetime tax liability.
Yeah, I like that.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a lot, though.
It is. It is. Well, not so that leads us perfectly into our final strategy, number 7.
Okay.
And that is, should you work with an advisor during this important phase of life? And again, there's a lot of people who candidly, they may say, they may rightly believe that they can manage their own financial affairs in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
But I always think the big question is, do you want to commit the time, the energy necessary to design these strategies, to understand some of these tax laws and some of the tax implications? Do you want to learn all this, or do you want to stay on top of it in order to have a successful retirement? Or would you prefer to partner with an advisor who can walk with you every step of the way? And actually, that's everybody's choice to make. But I think here's also, again, we kind of tie it back to that tax conversation we just had, where tax planning can be the ultimate differentiator when it comes to whether or not you choose to work with an advisor, because there are such big tax implications. So as you think about it, you spend 2/3 of your life saving and accumulating wealth for retirement so you can retire happily and comfortably and do all the things you want to do. But then you spend the final third of your life living on what you've accumulated. And many people, there is no plan B, right?
Right.
Unless you either want to or you're able to go back to work. That may not even be, you may not even have that option depending on, health circumstances.
Right.
And that's just the thing. Getting this phase wrong isn't just a mistake. It could jeopardize your entire retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Somebody who, say through their 40s, early 50s, they've been, stocking away money in the 401k, and they've been, contributing to that for years and years and years. When is the point where you got to say, all right, I got to start really paying attention to this stuff? Like, what is the age around when you're like, well, I probably should get somebody that can help me more with this?
To me, so for example, just using our practice as an example, most of our clients are going to be coming to us somewhere in that 2 to 5 year window before retirement, or even maybe recently retired, where they're in the midst of trying to make some of these decisions. Again, when you think about Social Security, I tell people that maybe younger, in their 40s, you just say, okay, plan on taking Social Security at full retirement age, whatever that might be for you. But when you get to within that window of time, that 2 to 5 years, now we got to be a little bit more diligent about that decision. If it's a couple, when would one spouse start versus the other? Or do we delay one benefit as long as possible and start one earlier? All those types of decisions, again, once you get into that 2 to 5 year time frame of, okay, when I'm ready to start taking income out, that's when those decisions really become important. And then looking at how are my assets structured. If everything I have is in a pre-tax account, which so many people it is, their 401k, just like you said, but when that money comes out, it's taxable. And we just talked about on the tax piece, how big of an impact that can have, whether it's because of required distributions or simply because if that's the only place you can draw money, it's going to be 100% taxable.
Mm-hmm.
That could push your taxation on your Social Security up, all these different things. So that's where we start looking at, again, when you get within a couple of years of retirement, that's when you really want to start nailing down that retirement income strategy.
Okay.
looking at taxes, looking at Social Security, looking at prioritization of accounts. Which accounts will I start drawing from first? And that doesn't even get into, okay, what if I retire when I'm 60 or I'm 62 before
Yeah.
I started Medicare? What's my plan or strategy for healthcare expenses during that maybe 2 to 5 year window before I become Medicare eligible at 65? So that's, again, you want to use that 2 to 5 year window of planning opportunity to really start nailing these things down. So by the time you get to retirement, you're not as worried about it. Again,
Okay.
it doesn't mean you won't worry, but you're less stressed about it and you're more focused on what will I actually do? What do I want to spend my time doing?
Right.
And hopefully it's not worrying about taxes and the investment in the market and all that stuff.
No, it just seems late to me. Like, as somebody who's in their mid-50s, I'm like, I don't want to wait until 2 to 5 years before I retire. I want to take care of this stuff now. Let me get it off my head. Like,
Well, and again, I wouldn't say that means that you wouldn't start planning.
okay.
It means in terms of nailing down my retirement income strategy. So that's where, so
Okay.
that's a great point. So I think about you. I've said this a lot. When you work with a financial advisor, there's many great financial advisors out there. You want to find an advisor that specializes in you and your problems. So when you're thinking about you're 45, you probably have, we talked about kids. When you're 45, you probably still have children that may be at home or they may be getting ready for college. Obviously, depends on when you had kids, but those decisions are going to be different than the decisions the 65-year-old is making.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Right. And so that's where I would say, okay, as I work with an advisor, I want somebody who's going to be able to help me with my problems and help me solve those problems and has a track record of solving those problems. Right.
Okay.
So if you're 45, yes, you want to start saving. You want to make sure you're putting money away, doing all those things. But one of the things I found is if you're doing financial planning and I'm 35 years old and this financial advisor comes back and says, well, you need $5 million to retire by the time you're 65. That can be extremely nerve-wracking.
Taxing on your whole body.
So I think one of the things when you're talking about the 35-year-old and the 45-year-old, it's having the right habits, right?
Okay.
So am I saving enough? So yes, I need that nest egg out there, but I would suggest focusing more on, am I saving enough each year? If it's, if maybe it's a goal of I've got to save $30,000 a year, whether it's my 401k, my Roth IRAs, wherever it might be.
Okay.
Making sure I'm hitting those annual targets versus having this big, overwhelming number out there. You probably remember those commercials. I don't remember if it was Schwab. I don't remember who it was, but the whole commercial was, what's your number? And these people walking around with these huge numbers on those. But when you're 35 and you see that $3 million number, that can be intimidating. Saying, can I ever actually get there?
But are those numbers necessary though too? $3 million?
It always depends on the circumstances,
Right.
actually, what your resources are, what your lifestyle is going to look like. But back to my point about saying, okay, once I'm within 2 to 5 years, we probably have a pretty good idea of what your number really actually is.
Right.
Now we say, okay, how do I turn whatever that number is that I'm going to have in the next couple of years? Now, how do I turn that into an income? How do I turn that into the resources that are going to provide the lifestyle that I want? That's why I talk about that 2 to 5 year number for us as a practice, where our focus is on that retirement income phase versus the accumulation phase.
Yeah, I'm just worried that people hear $2, $3, $5 million and they get scared. They're like, I'm never going to be able to do that. So that's why I'm always like, is that really what we need? I don't know.
And whether it is or not, the biggest thing I would encourage people to do who are still in those accumulation years is focus on the habits of saving X amount. What is the number I need to save per year? And did I hit it or not?
Okay.
So we do have some clients that are in more kind of in that early 50, later 40, early 50 range, where it's more about, let's set a savings goal for the year. Ultimately, the rest will take care of itself. We talked about, the history of the market over 30 years. So if I'm 35 and I'm got a 30-year window before retirement, all these same concepts still apply. It's just that I'm saving into that market versus trying to take distributions from that market. And so I can say, what is my savings target for this year? And can I increase it every year? So if I'm saving $25,000 a year in 2025, well, can I increase that by 3% in 2026 and just continue the right habits? Ultimately, you're going to get where you're going to get, but it's the habit of savings. Telling people that you need to save $25,000 this year, assuming the resources are there,
right,
is less overwhelming than saying, well, you need $3 million in 20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I wish I could go back to 35 and start over.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that are out there in the same, but again, you got to start where you're at today.
Yeah,
That's
and
the best thing
we
you can
were
do.
all told. I mean, I was told as a young adult, put money away, don't cash in that pension, save your money, and I didn't listen.
I mean, because it does it. The urgency grows the closer you get.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I wanted to talk about, when you're thinking about working with an advisor, we talked about actually, somebody that understands tax implications and the distribution phase of life for us, when you're in that phase of trying to transition into retirement. I wanted to share just a few questions I think would be helpful for people who may be considering hiring an advisor. And these are really going to apply whether, again, you're hiring somebody because you're preparing for retirement, or if you're in those early 30s, 30s, 40s, whatever it might be. Here's some questions that I think will help regardless. The first one is, are you a fiduciary? Now, the reason I include this is because it's become a real buzzword in our industry. A lot of advisors throw this term around like it's a selling point. And I think what's funny is you're told to ask this question. If you look at the CFP website, you look at a lot of these different websites, they tell you to ask the advisor, are they a fiduciary? But they don't give you any context as to what it really means, right? And I think and I think it's kind of a black eye on our industry that it needs to be explained what a fiduciary is, because basically, just to give you the definition, a fiduciary is legally and ethically obligated to put your best interest first. So I've got to put the client's interest ahead of mine as the advisor. Why does that need to be why do I need to tell you that? It should be just assumed, right? That should just be kind of table stakes. But again, that word fiduciary is thrown around by advisors like it's something like it's a differentiator, when unfortunately, in many cases, it might be. But I think for clients who are evaluating financial advisors, you need to understand what that actually means when you're going in to have that conversation with an advisor, you're interviewing advisors. What does that really mean? Because again, ultimately, it's not just about the recommendations, but it's about transparency, minimizing conflicts of interest, and it's always prioritizing your needs above the advisor's compensation. That's the biggest thing you want to understand. When you ask that question, that's what you're talking about.
Right. And the fact that a lot of fees are a percentage of what you have or earn, it really is in your best interest to make sure I am getting what's in my best interest.
Well, and that's the thing. One last thing I want to tell you, and it ties to that conflicts of interest, because that's kind of what you just talked about. There's a kind of a natural conflict of interest when you work under the assets under management strategy. In that, okay, if you call me your client is calling me as the advisor and saying, hey, I would need to pay off this debt, or I've got this large expense, and say, okay, well, that would negatively impact the advisor if they're under assets under management strategy, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, that's where these conflicts of interest come into play. And I will tell you, every advisor, doesn't matter what type of fee structure it is, assets under management, flat fee, whatever, every advisor has conflicts of interest.
Okay.
If they say they don't, you need to run the other direction, right? Okay. You just need to understand how those conflicts of interest impact you, if at all. And again, to some extent, you just got to, trust the idea that, okay, if this financial advisor, do I trust them? Do I believe what they're saying? And I always encourage people who are evaluating advisors, ask for references. Say, okay, let me talk to 3 people who are in my same situation. Would you mind if I reach out to them and just ask them a couple of questions? If the advisor is hesitant to do that, they might need to say, hey, give me a couple of days. Let me just give them a heads up that you're going to maybe reaching out to them. If it goes beyond that, again, you probably need to go a different direction.
Okay, good to know.
Right. Second question I would say is, what services do you provide? And this kind of ties back to what we've been talking about so far, is because not all advisors do the same thing. You have some that may only manage investments and that's all they do. They don't really do the planning. You have others like us who also focus on comprehensive planning with retirement income, tax strategies, Social Security, Medicare, estate planning, and everything in between. But no, what services does that advisor provide?
Okay.
And is it aligned with what you're looking for? Again, if you're a 35-year-old who's got college on your mind, you've got younger children, what's their experience in helping people solve those problems?
Okay.
Or if you're 65 and you're trying to figure out, how do I put all these income and the retirement planning puzzle pieces together? What's your experience with that? And again, make sure it aligns with what you're looking for, what your challenges are, and that they have a track record of helping people like you solve those problems.
Okay.
right? Number three is, what does a typical year of service look like? So somebody might be great at sales. They might get you in the door and you sign the dotted line and now now you're their client. But if you don't know what happens after that, that can be a challenge. So what happens after that? I talked to, when we put together an initial simply retirement roadmap for somebody, I tell them this is about as good as the next 24 hours because something's going to change.
Yeah.
Tax laws changes, your situation changes, you lose a job, you get a job, whatever it is, you have a new grandchild, something's going to change in a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So from my perspective, I stress that it's not just this initial phase where we put a plan, quote unquote, plan together. It's what happens after that.
Okay.
But just trying to share an example so you have some context as to so how we do it. So we meet with every client at least twice a year, or we at least offer it. Obviously, life happens sometimes. But for us, we meet typically in the spring, in May or June, right after tax time, right after you get your tax return, because we start wanting to look at what are some of the proactive tax planning strategies that might be available for the current year, right? Then in the fall, we do again, same thing. We're actually right in the middle of preparing for this right as we speak. October, November, we start looking at your income, your tax picture, while we still have enough time to actually take action on some of these tax planning strategies before the end of the year, where we're not interfering with family and holidays. So we want to do it in this October, November timeframe because people just get busy and it just gets put off. But did we get your required distributions taken care of? If Roth conversions made sense, we got plenty of time to take action on those. So anything that tax planning wise, this is a really critical time of year to take action so you don't miss out on potential opportunities.
Sounds
And
good.
of course, we're always available throughout the year for questions and changes and unexpected life events. But I want clients to know, here is what's going to happen over the next 20 years. We're going to offer twice per year meetings. Here's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to focus on your retirement income or to focus on your tax planning. But know, what does a typical year of service look like when you're working with that advisor beyond just the initial quote unquote financial plan?
Sounds good.
Right?
So I don't have to, wait until May or June or October or November to say, I have this purchase coming up.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. So what I found is our clients feel very comfortable knowing that, okay, I know when Eric and his team are going to be reaching out to me to schedule meetings. And then they can decide, okay, is this a high enough priority item that, hey, I actually need to give them a call. Let's go ahead and get a time on the calendar to talk by phone or Zoom or in person, because there are going to be things like that. We had a client that, he was trying to make a decision on retirement. And should I retire? Should I pull the trigger? I've got an offer for a package. Should I take it? That's not a wait till October, November decision.
No, it is not.
But there are those other things of, hey, I'm thinking about buying a new car. Do you mind if we put that on the agenda for our next meeting? Right. Okay. So those types of things. So I got an email just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm thinking about this is again, unfortunate situation where her husband passed away last year. He's the one that always handled these things, handled the car leases and buying the cars and all these different things. So she emails me, hey, I'm still paying this auto lease, trying to decide what to do. I'm looking at getting a new car. What do you think I ought to do? And I send back a couple of responses. Hey, here's some things to think about. Do you want to schedule a time to talk sooner rather than later? Or are you okay if we add this to the agenda for our upcoming meeting? Mm-hmm. So there's always different circumstances around, what we can help with. The question is, from a priority standpoint or urgency standpoint, do they feel comfortable just adding it to the agenda for the upcoming meeting? Or should I go ahead and give Eric a call and let's schedule a time to talk more in detail about it?
Okay. Sounds good.
Right. But I do think that, hopefully an advisor can bring more than just, the technical knowledge, but especially during these retirement income years, these retirement years where it's having someone who by your side, when the emotions can run high, markets get volatile, help you make sound decisions instead of the emotional ones. And that really becomes a key when you're in those retirement years. And then if you are the financial decision maker, this is something else. If you're the primary decision maker in your household, one of the greatest values, I think, of having a trusted advisor is knowing that your spouse will have a professional to rely on if something happens to you. Now, I want to share something that I'm extremely passionate about. And this actually just came up last week. And it kind of been weighing on me. And I actually posted on LinkedIn about this, but a prospective client called me, getting divorced. They've been married for over 20 years. And this is the exact quote. My husband has had a financial advisor since we've been married. I have never talked to him. Mm-hmm. To me, that is completely unacceptable. whether again, do we pass some responsibility on to her? Whatever it might be. To me, for the advisor, that's now why unacceptable is probably a nice term. I would say I would almost say
Right.
it's malpractice.
Mm.
And that's the thing. Unfortunately, in this case, she's reaching out because she's in the middle of divorce. Her word, she's never been allowed to be part of the finances. And the decision around what to do from a financial, she's in a situation where she doesn't know what they have, right?
Oh, that's
And
really
so
bad.
it's like, how does she make an educated decision? Fortunately, she explained that she said, I saw your story. You raised by a single mom. I'm going to be, so they got an 18-year-old son. Saw you were raised by a single mom. That's going to be me. That's going to be my story. Reached out to us exactly because of that, because
Oh,
she
good.
didn't know where to turn and felt like she needed resources. So we set up a time to talk. We've shared resources. She's worried about, it's hard to say, she's worried about the husband potentially trying to hide assets,
Mm-hmm.
which is it, it's probably a legitimate fear, but is it because she doesn't know what they have that she's worried about that? Or is he really trying to do that? Don't really know.
Well, and how would you? I mean, if you don't
Right.
know what you have, he could easily do that.
And unfortunately, that's a very reoccurring story of,
Right.
hey, the husband, and it's not necessarily always intentionally done that way, but it's just, you find these situations where the husband handles that.
Right.
I stayed in her, she was a stay-at-home mom, so she's got concerns about Social Security and things like that she's going to have to deal with. But that was really the thing, is she reached out to us. Now we can at least share resources with her, help her go in the right direction. I even referred to her to her forensic accountant just to say, hey, here's some questions I have about what could happen. Is there anything I need to be aware of? Something I need to communicate to my attorney? But being willing to ask and step out there, because if you're listening to this right now, I just want to be clear. If your advisor isn't making space for you, for your voice, are not taking proactive steps to involve you as the wife or the woman in the relationship, you don't have an advisor. He has an advisor, but you don't have one.
True.
And this means that you basically have to choose, but you have to choose. I'm going to encourage you to be proactive. If you find yourself in this situation, hopefully you're not getting divorced, but if you're not going to those meetings at least every couple of years to hear what's going on, to know what you have, if nothing else.
Right.
How much do we have in IRA accounts and 401ks and Roth account, whatever it is, you at least need to know what the situation is, because you just never know. Because again, we've talked about in multiple episodes, the wife lives longer than the man does.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's divorce or ultimately being widowed,
Mm-hmm.
you got to know what you have. Otherwise, you're going to be in a tremendously difficult situation. So again, take your seat at the table, ask questions, be part of the decisions. And if you're not being included, it may be time to find a new advisor who respects you, respects your goals, because again, it is your retirement, it's your goals, it's your decisions. And you definitely need a voice. You deserve a trusted advisor who's going to walk with you every step of the way.
Yep.
All right, so again, a little bit more. We'll wrap this episode up. Just a quick recap of our 7 strategies. Number 1 is have a plan. The portfolio is not the plan. The portfolio is what helps you get from point A to point B, but the plan itself, you got to know where you're at. You got to know where you're going before the investments ever come into play. Understanding the true objective of a retirement portfolio, which should be growth of income. Reframing risk, thinking about it in terms of years of income, not percentages, not how far did my portfolio go down last year, but thinking about it in years of income and that war chest. How much do I need in my war chest to help me get through those difficult periods when they happen, not if.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the role of stocks. Again, stocks for long-term growth and rising income, even in the ups and downs. The value of dividend growth, seeking steady income that can outpace inflation, or at least historically has outpaced inflation. Managing taxes. The less you pay in taxes, the more you get to keep, more you get to spend. And then consider working with an advisor, getting guidance to tie all these pieces together. Again, these 7 strategies are timeless, but what makes them powerful is how you apply them to your own life.
Okay.
All right. So lastly, just some key steps to go from here. So just some simple steps, put these strategies into action. Again, seek professional guidance. If you're not sure if you need an advisor, there's a number of resources we can share as well. Organizations like Savvy Ladies, Purse Strings, we'll share some links to those episodes. If you're not sure if you're ready to work with an advisor, you're not sure where you're starting, that's a great place to turn to. Develop a plan, write down your goals, your income needs, how your savings is going to support those. implement the strategy. You got to put it to work. Set up your accounts, automate your savings, organize your investments and your taxes. And again, review and adjust. Check in regularly with your advisor, with yourself. If you're managing it on your own, as life changes, you got to make sure that your plan is adapting to those changes. The other thing is, remember, you don't need a perfect plan to begin. Just take one small step. Check your spending, set aside a few months of cash as a cash reserve, review your Social Security statement, look and see again, get an idea of where you're at, and these small steps will start to add up. Last thing is, if you are looking for guidance, we would love the opportunity to chat. We've talked about these 7 strategies. This is what we do on a regular basis. If you'd like to have a second opinion, or if you're looking at making a decision on retirement in the next year or so, even next couple of years, you can visit getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to schedule your complimentary tax and retirement analysis. Basically, our retirement process works like this. We'll take you through our 3-step Simply Retirement Roadmap process. We give you an action plan. Here are the things that we believe you should do to get you from point A to point B. At that point, we have our take your time step. You review your roadmap, decide if we're the right fit for you. And then from there, it's that personalized ongoing planning. You hire us to do that heavy lifting so you can enjoy retirement. We talked about what that actually looks like. So hopefully that gives you at least some context around what an advisor relationship could look like. That is it for today's episode and for our series on these 7 essential strategies for successful investing in retirement. As a reminder, for all the links and resources mentioned today, visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share our show. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.